Tens of thousands of tech employees were laid off from major corporations this week, but that did not slow down their stocks even one drop. I'm Gav Blacksburg from Wolf Financial, and I'm here with Evan from Stock Market News. And we're going to run you through real quick everything major that happened in the stock market this week and what you need to know about these corporations and the moves that they are making. Let's dive right into it with a look at this week's heat map. What stands out to you, Evan?
Yeah, first of all, if you do enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe. We're both grinding on YouTube and trying to keep these channels going. As far as I'm looking at this heat map and what really stands out to me, it's those big mega cap tech stocks, which mostly were green. We talked about the layoffs there. Tesla, Google, Nvidia really leading the way, but Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft also having decent days. Then the majority of the rest of the market pretty much red. So mega cap kind of keeping us afloat this week. What did you think, Wolf?
Yeah, super interesting to see those names. Like you said, Tesla, Google, Apple, really green, and then just areas of the market getting absolutely destroyed: aerospace and defense, industrials, households. We also saw a lot of names that had really pumped last week start to come down this week. So there's actually a lot of middle ground in here. Super excited to see how this plays into the upcoming week. Taking a brief look at just our top performers. We already kind of mentioned this, but a lot of these large caps did end up green. You could see the majority of
Yeah.
this graphic right here leaning green.
The
Uh,
only thing I want to mention on there is Meta, kind of slowly creeping back up to the list. They might be getting into the top 10 soon again. But yeah, we can keep moving after that. Watch out for Meta.
Yeah, keep an eye out for Meta. Going into those best performing large cap stocks, you made a note to point out that Coin is on here back to back, the number one spot, 2 weeks in a row. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Bitcoin back over $23,000 per coin. Ethereum over 1,600 at the moment. We'll see if it's able to keep up its momentum. You still have Shopify CEO Toby Lutke buying it in mass. And some other insiders like Brian Armstrong are actually selling. So curious to see how that one continues to go. Anything else stand out to you from here?
Yeah, I mean, you said Shopify there. That's on this list. I wouldn't expect to see a name the size of Google or, yeah, no, Google, both shares of it are on here. So Nvidia, Tesla, overall good week for tech, it looks like.
Yeah,
And
I'm
moving on to those worst performers, the stocks that didn't have the best week. I'm seeing Ford, Rivian, GM. Looks like those traditional EV, wow, traditional car companies didn't have a great week. Took me a little bit
yeah.
to get it out, but yeah.
Goldman Sachs getting run through as well. We'll talk about their earnings in just a moment. Let's get right into that. In fact, earnings season is back. We had our first major earning announcements this week. We started off with the banks and then we rolled into airlines, Netflix, and more. Which numbers and ideas that were coming around earnings stood out to you the most?
Yeah, so just jumping into it, Goldman Sachs, that EPS miss, they came in with $3.32. Wall Street wanted $5.77. That's why the stock really got destroyed. So definitely watching that. A lot of the banks were mixed. Names like Goldman did pretty bad, and names like Morgan Stanley definitely did a little bit better. Moving over to United Airlines, I thought their forward guidance was pretty interesting. For this current year, 2023, they expect to get EPS between $10 and $12. Wall Street wanted $6.54. That's quite a large beat there. Looking at Procter and Gamble, a lot of people do use their products. I thought it was pretty interesting that there had a 10% increase in prices and the volume of products sold decreased by 6%. So, inflation, generally, this isn't the thing that you want to see. You want to be growing those volume and those units and price as well, probably. But for Procter and Gamble, those price increases making up for volume decreases. And then Netflix was the biggest report, in my opinion, this week. Netflix, they said they added 7.66 million subscribers globally last quarter. Wall Street wanted 4.5 million. So that's quite a large beat on subscriber expectations. And then the CEO, co-CEO, actually, Reed Hastings, stepped down from his role into the role of board chairman. Now, Ted Sarandos and Greg Peters are now the co-CEOs of Netflix. So some change in leadership at the top, but I think that's pretty good coverage on the earnings for me. Was there anything that stood out to you, Will?
I think you hit on all the major points.
Awesome.
We're excited to see where Netflix goes from here. Let's go through major headlines from this week. Now, there's a lot in here, so if you're watching the video, feel free to pause at any point. You can kind of look through some of these. We're just going to cover the top 2 to 3 from each day. And of course, as well, if you're liked and subscribed to this channel, you'll continuously see these stories coming across your feed. Let's get into it with Monday. We had a couple of top stories here. We really wanted to highlight here these fully electric vehicles making up almost 10% of all new cars sold. Obviously good for those car makers that are focusing in that niche, which has been continuously growing. What's the other story from Monday that really stood out to you?
Yeah, the other story that really stood out to me on Monday was China's population decreased in 2022 for the first time in 60 years. It only dropped by about 850,000 people, which when you have billions of people in the country, that isn't the largest, but it still didn't increase. And I think that's going to be a theme going forward for the next couple of years, maybe not next year, but decades in the future. And India's population is actually expected to pass China's population this year. So I think this is just the start of an ongoing topic we'll be talking about for the next little bit.
Yeah,
But one other really quick story, the Harley Davidson one going all electric. A lot of people were pretty interested in that, and that's definitely one I'll be watching. I'm expecting them to add in some fake sound to give the real culture of the Harley, but I'm definitely watching that news story as well.
yeah, China definitely taking a hit due to COVID there.
Yeah.
Running into Tuesday, the top story of the day was Party City filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Party City has been halted ever since. They've removed trading of the stock, or the stock honestly doesn't even show up on most platforms at this point. They've stopped the flow of data over there. So that's a big story of the day. And then our other big story from Tuesday, if you want to dive a little bit more into this, Apple didn't really do a big product announcement. They just released their products. It's kind of unusual for them.
I know, I did think it was weird. And my tinfoil speculation hat is on. I think maybe one possible explanation why they would have done that is they have a bunch of stuff they wanted to announce this year, and maybe this was kind of lower end on it and they just did it randomly. Maybe that's just me hoping and speculating, but we'll see. But Apple released kind of three new products. They announced two new chips, the M2 Pro and the M2 Max, and then put a MacBook Pro and a Mac Mini with those chips in it. So two new chips, two new computers with those chips, and the first new products that Apple announced this year. They also announced another product after it, a second generation HomePod. So this was kind of a theme this week, and we'll see if Apple releases more product outside of events going forward.
Absolutely. Also from Tuesday, that Boston Dynamics video went viral
That's
showing
pretty
off
cool.
their robot. Cool stuff. Will we ever see it in the wild? TBD. All right, Wednesday. This is where some big firings and layoffs really came into effect. Microsoft and Amazon both making significant cuts. I think around 5 to 6% of their workforces were let go. Anything else?
Amazon, it was closer to 1% because they have so many people. But yeah,
Right,
Microsoft,
they've
that's
really
right.
scaled up over the last couple of
Yeah.
years. A
So
little.
I think that goes into what that point you just made there. That is one thing to take into account. The companies really doing layoffs now are companies that aggressively hired in the past. So it's not like they were at an even state and then they're just letting people go. This was companies that were heavily expanding their workforce, and for most cases, they're really just to where they were last year, as opposed to, really culling the agency. Like Twitter, that
It,
is down like 60, 75% of its
it's not
workforce.
even just back to last year. One of the things that Jeff Bezos took advantage of was he saw opportunity when others saw strife. And as the pandemic was hitting and people were losing their jobs, Amazon aggressively hired. Like anybody could get a job there. They were running courses. They were hiring people to work night shifts. They were hiring people to work all the time because they saw a lot of opportunity. So naturally, now that you don't have that zero interest rate environment, you don't have stimulus like you did, it makes sense that they're going in this direction. Again, like we said, it's about 1% of the company. And then I also
Yeah.
know we wanted to just hit on this story real quick. Twitter auction off items from their headquarters. Sounded like there were maybe some coffee machines and some other stuff in there, but they also auctioned off a big bird statue. Elon Musk getting ready for that $1 billion interest payment on the way next month, I believe.
Hey, if I would have known that bird statue was coming, maybe we would have had to put a bid on it. But pretty interesting that Microsoft layoff announcement was announced on Wednesday. The Amazon one was announced a week, maybe about a month or so prior. And we just heard that this week was when they were starting it. They fired 23 employees from that Seattle office. So they have been kind of implementing those staff cuts. The
Yeah.
one other story on here that I wanted to highlight that people did find pretty interesting was Donald Trump is preparing to return to Twitter and Facebook. No matter what you think, it's just going to lead to a lot of chaos and just more activity on Twitter, I would imagine. So that's good for two people who make their full time living on Twitter. And we'll see. But I know a lot of people were kind of playing at the whole fact that what is he preparing for? Is he doing some like arm calisthenics? Is he running a marathon? What's happening here? But that should be coming back soon.
Twitter fingers turned to trigger fingers. All right, Thursday we had the U.S. hit its debt limit. quick little chart here for those who are unfamiliar. The debt limit got raised back in, was that December of 2021, I believe, and was pushed up to around what the $31.5 trillion mark. And over the course of the last year, we have quickly come up to there, as a lot of money has been spent in numerous places by the government, some more than others. So you can see we have reached it. At this point, we do need to have that vote, and it will likely see an extension. Often does. Reminder, they need to extend it in order to pay the politicians. So it's a pretty simple vote in many of their minds. Anything else standing out to you from this day?
Costco reauthorizing their share buyback program worth up to 4 billion was pretty interesting for me. And then also Meta saying that financial literacy is a priority skill for Gen Z. I think that's going to be a theme that these social medias really have to play on going forward, and they kind of already had. So that's something that was pretty interesting for me as well.
On God, bussin' for real, for real. All right,
No cap.
Friday. Yes, Friday. Let's come on into it. So Google was the news of the day that they were going to lay off about 12,000 jobs. Google did this. It was a little rough how they did it. There were reports that employees were laid off using the technology that they themselves had developed at Google for Google. There was a number of people that received an email late in the evening and did not see it before showing up the next day, and basically found out when their key cards didn't scan to get into the building while their coworkers did, was how many of them had that happen. So it's been going a little bit rough over there. But like we said, stocks performing pretty well off of it. Stock market does seem to like these companies reducing their liabilities.
Check your email before you go into the office for the day.
Yes.
That's a
Hashtag check
piece of
your
advice
email.
going forward. Yeah. And then the other piece of information that I think you might find pretty interesting on here, obviously Google, that was definitely the biggest story of the day,
It's
but
crazy.
the feds took $700 million of Sam Bankman-Fried's assets in cash and equity, and that was according to CNBC. The story feels like it's been going on for a while, and I don't know how it took this long to get it, but hey, maybe some of that money is going back to the FTX guys.
Doubtful.
FTX, yeah, the customers. That's what I meant by that. Probably doubtful though.
Probably Ukraine first, but we'll see. We'll see where the money ends up going. That's my biggest question always. When companies get fined or seized, what happens to the money? This just happened with Nexo this past week. Nexo was a platform that was offering 12% interest rates on different products, and the government basically fined them for not registering as a security. They had already over $2 billion of assets in there. Now, they're not insolvent. They didn't lose people's money, but they got fined $45 billion. So the money's not going to the customers because they didn't lose money. What does the government do with all this money? That's what I want to know. Hashtag
One
investigate the
thing that
government.
one thing that's pretty interesting is this is a little bit different. There is a new whistleblower rule that's actually been in effect for a little bit. But if you work for a large company, you whistleblow for something that's going wrong, and then there a fine result of that, you are eligible for, I believe it is 10 to 20% of that fine over $1 million. There has been multiple. I've seen $30 million payout, a $50 million payout to a whistleblower. So some of it goes to the people. But moving on swiftly from that, what is a week in the stock market without 5 million Fed presidents giving their thoughts every single second? So here's what some of the biggest ones that I saw from the week. You know, Parker talking about 25 basis points, kind of where they should be at going forward. We had Bullard, who actually is not a voting member this year, suggesting that 50 basis point hike is where he is at currently, and a couple other stuff. I also saw this Williams quote: the end of the China lockdowns could tick global inflation higher. I wonder if that's something we'll be watching as well. But yeah, the Fed presidents were speaking as much as they always do.
Perfect. Okay, so that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully this was super helpful. Got you an idea and concept of what was happening with layoffs, with Trump coming back to Twitter, with Fed speakers, and much more. Reminder, big earnings season starting really this week, but really next week when we have Tesla and others. So we're going to make another video right after this covering everything you need to know for earnings. We're going to chop those two separate so that you can easily digest them. As always, I'm Gav Blacksburg from Wolf Financial. This is Evan from Stock Market News on Twitter. And if you're liking these videos and subscribing to the channels, you'll be seeing our content more coming across your feed, always free and always valuable. Take care, everybody. We'll see you in the next video.